All right, welcome to episode 317 of Together BHA. Robin, welcome. How have you been? I've been terrible. The last 3 days I've had severe man flu, and like today is the first bounce back day. So, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm a day behind you, I think. I did say quite amusing. I did actually catch it from watching you do your analysis thing where you said you were dying of flu, and within about 20 minutes of watching that, I also had man flu. So anyway, no, all good, all good.
Good. I guess what's not good is yet another L in the lost column, and we'll talk about it all today. But I think the first thing I want to really talk about was the idea of, and me and Adam talked about this on the last episode, and I'd love to see your perspective, although it's kind of belated now. There was a big discussion online in just about every social media space as to whether people saw this game against Liverpool this weekend as a free hit, pressure off, a reset, just go for it and see what happens, like a good break from the league, or the last real chance for happiness this season of like a cup run. It seems to be very divided, and people really felt one way or the other about this, where it was like, don't matter, focus on the league. We're still within like, a couple of wins away from Europe. Like we've got big games to come. Like let's focus on getting out of relegation battle and into the European thing. And then others were like, no, like this is what we want. What were your thoughts when prior to the game at Anfield?
I think actually both sides of it. So one, like Liverpool have not had a stellar season, right, by their recent standards, so winnable in theory. But more than anything else, it's a momentum shifter, isn't it? If you suddenly win it, you're like, okay, we haven't won for a while, but actually we've just gone and won at Anfield. And it's largely the same group of players, right? The argument of like, oh, it's a free hit, it's a different thing, kind of doesn't work for me if you're picking the same squad, right? Because it's if that same group of players loses, they've lost another game. If you see what I mean. Like, so the momentum swings either way. So as you look at it now, post result, you've gone, well, it's done nothing because actually it's another loss in the books. So actually, people go, "Oh, it's a different competition." You go, but it's the same group of players who have now lost another game without scoring. So that can't be good.
No, not really. And I think probably the most damning thing, and I think people haven't talked about it enough, is that I brought it up just briefly with Adam post Wednesday, but 8 of our starting 11 against Villa were playing in the Europa League for us. 7 of this starting 11 were also Europa League regulars, aka like that peak team, right, that got us into Europe and were amongst our greatest of times, right? So there has clearly been regression somewhere to have the same players do one thing and then the other. But I think for me, it wasn't like it wasn't a humiliation, right? Like we weren't beat 6 or 7-0. Like you see some of these ones go down in the cup and just some crazy results. But it was almost dismissive. It felt like Liverpool barely actually got out of second gear in a year they've struggled. And almost just quite nonchalantly cast us aside. And that is not an Albion that we've seen probably ever in the Premier League, right? Because even if you go back to Houghton playing at Anfield, I'll never forget that, like, for some bizarre reason, twice a year, Gaetan Bong became an absolute lockdown left back against Mo Salah. And that was it. Like, for the other 36 games, he was like bad. But for the 2 games against Liverpool, even at Anfield, like Mo Salah hated Gaetan Bong, like with a passion, because for some reason he was superb. And I feel like we have never really been so almost comfortably dispatched against a top team as we were this weekend.
I think we started pretty well. First 15, 20 minutes we were decent. And that's a pattern we've seen. We saw it at Villa. I mean, obviously you were there. Like the way that we started at Villa, I was like, okay, we're like, there's some desire here, there's some fight. And we've seen it in other games. And I think this is what we've talked about before. The problem now is that more than ever before, if we don't score during those periods where we're on top, I know this is like, it's one of the cliches, right? That always gets trotted out. You've got to score when you're on top. But this is like, for us, if we don't score during that period, it now seems to just kill the confidence. So like it's a sort of double whammy almost. And we created a few chances. Like, I mean, we had Gomez's cross across the box that, you know, like no one's really gambled on being there. We had Gomez's chance from the slip. I think was it Van Dijk who slipped and then obviously recovered? Somebody slipped and let him in.
No, I think that's the key one, right? Because that obviously is saved, and within I think about 90 seconds, they're one.
Yeah, they then
like
score.
that's the huge one really for everything. Because I totally agree with you. I thought for the first 40 minutes, even like we played pretty well. You could feel the pressure building, you know, after that first 20, 25 minutes, and they were obviously becoming a better team. But yeah, there was still chances created, and I think that Gomez one was obviously the turning point for us because
such a bizarre finish as well. Like, I don't know why he didn't hit it with his left foot. He sort of tried to, like, I don't really know what he's tried to do. Like when you see the slow-mo of it, and it's like, I'm not quite sure in his head, like, what's the best outcome from that? Is it like, it's almost like the best you can do from there is like an audacious scoop over the goalkeeper with the outside of your right foot, which, you know, I suppose if there's one player in the team who's going to execute something ludicrous, it probably is Diego Gomez, actually, as we've seen with some of his goals. But yeah, it sort of summed up, that one moment sort of sums it all up, which is like, you've worked really hard, you've had an opportunity created by pressurizing the opposition in this case. But actually, I might be being harsh here, but I'd imagine most Albion fans watching that chance, I'd love to know how many people thought, well, this is a goal, like versus how many people just thought this definitely isn't ending up in the back of the net. Because it's just in a microcosm, it's like sort of everything that we've seen recently, which is actually in the sort of middle third of the pitch. We've actually been really good in a lot of games. But as soon as it's translated into that front third, I have zero confidence. I saw someone summed it up, and I put it in our group, I think. Someone summed it up, which was like, if football didn't actually involve scoring goals, we'd be really good. And actually, that sort of sums it up because we're playing really nicely in the midfield, pressing really well. There was actually some really nice sort of passing interchanges going on at speed. And you're like, well, this is really good. This is going somewhere. And it's like, no, it's not. Because in the final third, we are toothless at the moment.
Yeah, it's terrible in the final third. And I think, I mean, I wonder if part of that comes down to the manager, because he said himself he believes in principles over patterns, and he also says when it comes to the final third, he wants players to be brave and use their intuitions to solve problems in the box, and not rely on pattern play that they may have done in the past. He believes in heavily scripted patterns in the first two thirds around pressing and defending and intensity. But once you get 25 yards from goal, his hope, from his own words, is that he hopes the principles of what he's trying to do are going to create something special. And when you are a team as down on your confidence as this, and there is no confidence, I mean, it's being exposed pretty massively, isn't it? And Stephen in the chat saying for 18 months we've overpromised and underdelivered under Hertzler. And I've seen the idea on a couple of different outlets that Hertzler may actually be almost like a Vincent Kompany, where he could go into a big club, you know, like a Bayern Munich or a PSG, and actually be a really top football manager. But as soon as it becomes anything kind of middling, that's where his principles are exposed. Given what we've seen over the last couple of months, honestly, what do you think has gone wrong in that final third? I have a whole laundry list of thoughts, so I'd like to do it first. And Machina, I hope that's your name, Joe, in the chat. This is a Brighton podcast, so there's an Everton fan in the comments. Lives in Thailand, but I don't know how you found your way here, Joe, but welcome. We're going to spend the next 40 minutes being sad about Brighton. So you're more than welcome to listen in. But Robin, I mean, this is where our problems all lie now, right? Is in that final third. I think you had the exact minutes, but it's over 200 minutes without a goal now.
Yeah.
And you know, we've got a very defensively solid Brentford away next, which is never great. Yeah, I mean, I'd love your thoughts on where you think things have gone wrong here offensively, because it really is that entire final third where we are falling apart.
I think we've got something of a perfect storm, which is we have an out of form Mitoma and Minte, whichever way, whether you want to say out of form, slow to come back from injury, however you want to frame it, we have an out of form Minte and Mitoma, which is, clearly, even without, I'll come and talk about the players that have left on loan in a sec, but even if you take the squad as it was pre-January, you've got our two best wingers, both out of form at the same time, chronically out of form at the same time. You've then got Danny Welbeck, who has had a phenomenal first sort of third of the season, right? To the extent where people were angry that he wasn't in the England squad, which, if you consider that narrative now, is slightly ludicrous. But he has, as his career statistics would suggest, he has not kept up that run of form that he had for the first third of the season. I say, it's just as the stats would tell you. And you've then got the fact that, okay, if Danny Welbeck is having a slight drop off, who do you replace him with in the starting lineup? And that gives you the question, well, it's essentially a very promising Greek teenager who has scored a couple of really good goals. But you're at the stage where he is now the backup. So the problem that you've got is, out of form players. We don't have enough depth to actually bring in players.
Have we lost you, Robin?
I'm still here. Sorry, it just froze for a second. You've got out of form players. You've not got the alternatives that you can actually bring in. And like you said, in terms of what Hertz is trying to get people to do and sort of take responsibility in the final third, that's sort of not going to happen, I don't think, unless you've got very, very experienced players who back themselves to do that. Now, you could argue that Matoma is one who has created, in the final third, if you said, okay, shackles are off, do what we want in the final third, Matoma has shown us time and time again that he is capable of just delivering magic from there, right? Kostoulas has shown glimpses that he can do that, but it's expecting an awful lot of, a teenager in his first season in the Premier League to consistently do that. You know what I mean? We basically don't have the personnel in the squad as a whole to play like that in the final third, as far as I can see. Now that brings it back to the question of the manager. And I don't mean this sort of, what I mean is it's actually it's sort of a more fundamental question, which is he prepared to sort of sacrifice his principles to play a very kind of pragmatic style to try and get to get us out of a rut? And the answer is maybe he is, but actually, what do you fall back on? Again, if you've got two wingers that are out of form, and we literally don't have backups for them. So what are you falling back to? If you see what I mean. Like, it's not like you can go, actually, fine, Matoma and Minte need a rest, bring them out, and we'll bring in, Watson and Gruder, whatever it might be. And actually, we're just going to go, let's just ping crosses into Danny Welbeck. Even if you wanted to do that, we don't have the personnel right now to really do it. So you're kind of stuck. Like, it's literally, it's a combination of all sorts of things. The biggest issue is the lack of depth. Now, I know I've been pretty harsh on Hertzler since basically before he got the job. But in his defense, I think the absolute biggest factor is the fact that we have two wingers. and they're both like, we have two wingers. That's it. Like Diego Gomez is not a winger. Like Ferdi Kadioglu has sort of played there. He's not a winger. De Kuiper's played in a more, a more forward role. He's not a winger. Root has been tried there. He's not a winger. Like, it seems mad that we're in a situation where we literally have two wingers, both of whom have struggled with injury for most of this season. So if you're going to go, why are you struggling to score goals? It's, well, we haven't got any wingers and we don't have a striker who has a career record of prolific seasons up to 20 goals a season.
It feels almost an arrogance about it by loading out Tom Watson and Brian Gruder, isn't it? Like, because in a situation like this, in a situation like this, I don't care how much game time you want. Like, no, fellas, like we're in the shit here. We're in a relegation battle. Like, we are close to one. We can't let you go right now. We need all the depth possible because we can't afford to play a 17-year-old on his Premier League debut and his FA Cup debut at Anfield and at Villa Park because we have no other options on the right. And so we're going to keep you here. Like, unfortunately, I know you want to go get regular game time, but right now you can't because we need your goals and assists here. And the fact of the matter is, Brian Gruder's been gone for 16 days and he has more goals and assists this month than Brighton do. So it seems to have proven to be correct, doesn't it? Like that, it feels almost like we are still in the mindset that we are 10th and safe and possibly boring. By just going, yeah, go out, get some first team football. We'll see you in the summer. That's like, we're not in that situation. And I think it is almost this self-assuredness that like, we're not going to go, we're too good to go down. And that is probably the most dangerous mindset going, isn't it?
Did you see the Opta stats today? So the Opta computer has released its sort of predictions in terms of who to go down. Our chance, according to them, I know people have different, people, I'm not taking Opta as gospel. I know obviously they're very, very good in certain areas and they have a whole bunch of data points that are really useful. I'm going to give this figure out without judgment either way. I'm just going to say it as it is. They have said our chances of going down is 0.9%, according to the Opta computer.
Okay. I think the computer may change if we lose to Forest.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Right. I mean, it very much has still has, obviously, the bottom two are going to be the bottom two, right? I think
they're cooked,
that's
right?
Fairly undeniable. That third spot, Opta, I forget the exact stats. I think basically it has West Ham as the likely candidate for that third spot right now. And then it has Forest not that far behind West Ham in terms of that. And then it's sort of us and Palace are roughly on a level. But like you say, it's looking at it right now. I'll see if I can find the stat, but I think it was something like that. Either way, it thinks West Ham. It thinks the third team going down is going to be West Ham, and it thinks that we have a very, very, very slim chance of being that third team, which we probably do. Like, I've gotten a little bit annoyed with some of the sort of discourse which goes on, which is if you say that we're in a relegation battle, what a lot of people think you're saying is we're going to go down. And there's a chasm of difference between the two, right? One is having and people don't I've seen so much, if you go, we're in a relegation battle, people just assume you're never going to go down. It's like, it's not. What it means is, as you said a minute ago, the most dangerous thing that you can do is assume that we're fine, right? Like, even if you're 90% certain we're going to be fine, like, don't assume we are, because, West Ham went down they went down with like 43 points before, right? Like, so anyway, the nuance of it is it's we are in the discussion, right? Whether or not which side of the fence you fall, we are in the discussion. So yeah, Opta thinks we haven't got we haven't got a strong chance of going down, and it's probably looked at our fixtures and gone, well, we have Forest to play at home, we've got Wolves to play at home, we've got Burnley away, we've got Leeds away, we've got Spurs. Have we got Spurs to play again? Or have we played them twice?
No, we played them in April.
We've got Spurs. In theory, we're playing all the teams that are sort of We've got Leeds away as well. We're playing all the teams that are kind of down there.
There are a lot of six-pointers down there.
There's a lot of 6 pointers. But I was going to come on to go, we do not have a good record in these games, quote unquote, that are must win. Right? Like, we just don't historically. And you probably look at it and you go, okay, fine. What have we got now? 31 points. I think, right? So you need to be, if you're targeting this magic 40-point mark, you'd look at it on paper and you'd go, probably the 3 easiest games to win on paper, right, are Wolves at home, Forest at home, Burnley away.
Yeah,
I'd imagine if you look at our games, they're the ones you've got to target.
I've always said 38 is the goal for any season, first and foremost. Like, statistically, since 1992, I did the maths, and like 38 is actually the real 40-pointer. Like, a point per game is actually realistically in every season except for 3, I think, going to keep you up. And the way the Premier League sits right now, it's about the same sort of trajectory. Even if Nuno goes on an absolute mental run,
West Ham have got a horrendous run in. If you look at it, they've got some brutal, really tough games.
We talked about that. Yeah, it's one of the toughest run-ins I've seen in ever in the relegation battle.
Yeah, it's horrible.
If you think, for me, I just think beat Forest and Wolves at home and a draw away at Burnley gets you to safety. And like, I know that's very negative in like, just do that. I hope that we get lots of other results, right? Of course I do. But if you're looking at it pragmatically, win at home against Forest and against Wolves, and like we're all but there. And like by the time we get to those kind of last couple of games, we're probably looking at it already mathematically safe, right? Like realistically speaking. But
yeah,
right now, like we are in a situation that's a little bit scary. Lost 3 on the trot. 1 win in the year, like calendar year in the Premier League, and no goals in however many minutes it was. So
we could conceivably go an entire month without a goal, which I'm not sure we've ever done before. But if we don't score at Brentford, then we're staring down the barrel. But it's a really difficult situation, and there's not an easy way out of it. There's not an easy way out of it because we are at the situation. It's almost, it's a weird way of thinking about it, but it's almost more frustrating that we have these periods in the game where we play really well, but like we just don't take advantage of them. That's almost more frustrating than just being out and out terrible for the entire game, because it shows you that it's sort of, there's something there, and you just need a bit of, I feel like we have been quite unlucky this season. We haven't had luck fall in our lap in many games. So if you believe in that sort of thing, I'm expecting an awful lot of luck to fall in our lap in the next 12 games. Whether we get it or not is another situation. It's really difficult because, if we go back to the squad situation, what you would expect in this situation normally is you go, okay, fine, we need to take some people out of the firing line, and we need to go with some alternatives. He sort of tried that with Harry Howe, like you said, over the last couple of games, and he's clearly very, very, very talented for 17, right? We've seen flashes of this, but to suggest that he is ready to start Premier League games now, personally, I think is mad. Like, I think he's miles off the level of being ready to start Premier League games. If you look at the margins of stuff,
they have no fear from him, do they? They have no fear.
No. But actually, you look at the goal, the Liverpool goal, right? The first goal, he was being dug out in the halftime analysis because he just didn't close that cross down. Yes, it's a very good cross and it's a very good finish, and probably in under 21 football, you get away with not closing that down. But you can't do that. Like, it's a really difficult situation to throw him into. Like where everyone is like, we're clamoring for a goal, clamoring for a point, and the option is let's chuck a 17-year-old in. Right? It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult, and I find it. I could sort of, I know you talked about Watson and Gruder, like Watson I can understand more because he's barely had a kick in the Premier League with us, right? Played a couple of Carabao Cup games, looked all right, barely had a kick. Gruder, on the other hand, has played an awful lot of football. It's got to remember, this is a guy who played really well at Old Trafford, like laid on that goal for Danny Welbeck, has scored a couple of other goals this year. I know he's a bit of a Marmite player with the fan base, but to loan him out, given the football that he's played already and what he's delivered, and have the option to be, we're either going to play Harry Howell as a 17-year-old or we're going to play Diego Gomez as a winger, is just, I don't know. I can't get my head in the logic of that. Like, we don't have it. So what I'm saying is, there's not an easy fallback to change the 11 very much, is there? Because it sort of picks itself. When people are fit, it picks itself.
Well, the obvious answer is, like, we've got to get back to starting Minte and Mitoma, or like they're both fit enough to play. Like, it's insane that we're not. Going back to the game, obviously, conceding right before half time is probably the worst way we could go into a halftime setup, right? Curtis Jones scoring what was essentially a tap-in from Kirkez's pass in. And within 10 minutes of the second half, the game was all but over with Sosbolay's unbelievable goal that genuinely just ripped us apart from top to bottom. Never a good start. Then the triple sub of Mitoma, Minte, and Ruta on for Howell, Belaber, and Gomez. I mean, that's three players that I'd rather have started with those three. Not sure why they didn't. And then on 68 minutes, Pascal Gross gives away a penalty. We are sadly reaching a point where we have to have the Pascal Gross conversation sooner or later, right? As well, in that this is a player that is absolutely well suited for a team pushing towards Europe, but in a relegation battle where we are trying to keep points and not concede goals, Pascal Gross playing as a central defensive midfielder is a bonkers decision, right? I feel more confident with James Milner, aka the 70 minutes he performed at Villa. I thought was actually pretty well. I do not like Pascal Gross at defensive midfield in a situation where we need to be, keeping it as clean as possible. Doom in the chat saying that he thought Ferdy was fouled before. I think he probably was as well, right? I mean, it was hands to the face. Like, it can't be more. Like, it felt like it was a pretty poor foul. But it's also worth noting that they also had a goal incorrectly ruled out, right? So either way, it's a minimum of 3-0. You could even be looking at it as a 4-0 defeat if VAR was there. You can never trust VAR to get that hands to the face right? So like we could have ended up 4-0 down. But I mean, for me, like I said, I think like Pascal Gross giving away that penalty on Salah for the third goal, that lack of mobility is costing us, and it feels like the entire team's lack of mobility is costing us. If we are going to play on the back foot and try and keep a clean sheet, we need to be able to attack quickly. And you look at that front line that we played against Liverpool. Which of those players out of Gross, Hinshelwood, Gomez, Costolos, and Howell are going to be breaking quickly, with the exception of Costolos? Or Katsoulis, as the BT TNT guy loved to call him, which was just infuriating listening to. I'm sure there was a lot of people here who listened to that and like, oh my goodness, like how did nobody correct this man?
He did it at Villa. You wouldn't have seen it.
Well.
He did it in the Villa game as well, which obviously you wouldn't have heard.
No. I know you said that he did, but
I'd already got my annoyance out of the system by then. But yeah, it was really difficult. It kind of, the whole performance was much more what you would have expected from a kind of Chris Hughton PL era, where expectations were much lower. And if you go to these, if you go to Anfield or you go to, any of these other big grounds, then, there was an expectation that, yeah, we might put up a good fight, but ultimately we're not going to come away with much. And the counterbalance to all of this is like the speed with which this season has gone wrong, right? Like if you go back to the beginning of December, was it the Villa home game? I think it was right at the beginning of December.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
2-0 up in that.
Because it was the Wednesday night, wasn't it? It was like literally the third
I
or
think it was,
fourth of December.
right at the beginning. So you're 2-0 up in that Villa game, and we would have been third in the league at that point. Right? So you're looking at in 2.5 months, the thing has unwound in 2.5 months, which is, the speed of it is astonishing.
So we have the Finalysis that I'm on, and anybody can download the Finalysis app. They have actually grown it a lot since you probably last used it, Robin. You can add images now, the basics. They've actually added a lot of stuff. It's actually all right compared to where it was at before, which was just not great, but it's actually doing pretty good. But the one thing I wanted to touch on actually, and I'm glad you brought it to that because it's something that I found interesting. They introduced polls, like a poll, and the starting 11 can create polls. And I created the very first one on the 11th of January. And I wrote that it was a half-term report. We're still in the mix all over the league, really. Where do you realistically see us finishing come May? 14%, and there was quite a lot of votes on this one. 14% top six, 43% seventh, 29% 8th to 10th, 14% 11th to 16th, and nobody had us between the 17th and 20th. What do you reckon that poll looks like now if I ran it again today? So, yeah. I mean, you're talking about like how quick it flipped around just from, that's January the 11th.
That's a month, pretty much. A month
and 5 days.
Yeah.
And we have gone from the majority of people, I mean, 72% of fans believe that a top 10 finish was the minimum expectation on January the 11th. I suspect it's not quite that optimistic now, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think part of the reason why it's gone wrong so quickly, and it sounds weird to say it, I don't think it's even really the nature of the results themselves. I think it's the circumstances in which those results came about. I.e., you look at the Fulham game where we're a Danny Welbeck, armpit, whatever was deemed offside in that game. The game flips on that, and then we concede a very late goal. We then concede a very late goal in the Everton game. You know what I mean? It's actually not necessarily the results themselves. I think every game that we've had since then has sort of been another counterpunch almost. You get the late goals in the Everton and the Fulham games. You get Palace, which is, it's a game which can, create a lot of momentum in either direction. And, as we talked about at the time, basically every aspect of that game, has gone about as badly as it could have done, right? Sort of on and off the pitch, it may have well have been 5-0. It wouldn't have made much difference. So I think that's it. Every game has been, has delivered a slightly sort of counterpunch moment, which is just sort of, it's just compounded. It's really strange because I think back to the Man City away game, which wasn't that long ago, and we battered them. Like, we should have been like 3-0 up in that game. Again, that doesn't seem like that long ago. And yet, so actually, I think the drop is more, yes, we had our traditional December thing where we didn't win a game, etc. But actually, as your poll indicates, it's actually really from the Fulham game onwards, I think, where it's really gone to bits. You had the Bournemouth game sort of sandwiched in there as well, where obviously, we did the reverse and got sort of, a late equaliser.
But we still needed bailing out late, right?
Yeah, so I think it's really I think it's from that kind of Fulham game onwards. And even, that Fulham game, had that Danny Welbeck goal not been ruled out, we can get into what ifs until the cows come home. But, my point is, like, it's turned very quickly, and it's turned on not a huge number of things. It's just a whole bunch of like really badly timed things happening in successive games. that have just knocked the confidence. But this is, I think this is where you look to your manager. And you might have noticed I've been, for this entire 35 minutes, I've been reasonably fair to Fabian Herzler. I don't think I've really criticised him once in the last 35 minutes, which I don't think I would have done in the previous 35 hours worth of talking about it. But I do think this is where you look to the manager in these runs. The manager and the senior players is where you look. Like, right when you're in a tough moment, that's what you're paying. You're paying your money for, your Lewis Dunks, James Milner, Danny Welbeck,
Absolutely.
and the manager, right? This is where you want them to be the people who are trying to pull the team out of this rut. Now, as we always say, we don't see them in training, so we don't see the work that goes on. We've heard Lewis Dunk after Palace saying that he didn't think we were training hard enough, essentially, or working hard enough. So this is where the question mark can go: is the manager doing enough? Does he have the experience of being in the situation, dealing with this group of players in these sort of more difficult moments? Are we getting enough out of them? Lewis Dunk, is as we expect. You're always going to get him giving his all, right? I think I've very rarely seen him not give his all. Yes, he's had bad games. He's had games where he's been unlucky with deflections and that kind of thing. But I've never really come away from a game thinking he didn't give his all, right? For good or for bad. James Milner came on in the Villa game, wasn't it? Very early on, and looked basically our best player. And, Welbeck's been there. So you've got these senior players are kind of look like they're dragging their weight. They're trying to kind of G it up. But is the manager doing enough?
Well, they're clearly
I asked that as an open question. I
would argue that they're clearly not doing enough, because this is what I feel like we've been talking about this since the 7-0 at Forest, where there are little tidbits coming out from the squad saying they're not training hard enough, or not trying hard enough, or not working hard enough behind the scenes. Like, this is not new information. Like, they've been talking about this over a year now. Right, because I think I got a memory on my phone like a couple of days ago. It was like 1 year ago today, and it was the City ground. I was like, oh, fantastic.
Brilliant.
So like, it's not new. It's not new information. They've been talking about the fact that we aren't showing enough intensity and work in training now since over a year ago. And you talk about the rumors of like random fallouts, right? Like, we talked about Welbeck having a fallout potentially with the manager last Christmas over the fact that training is not good enough. That's there's no smoke without fire when it gets to a certain point, I think. And a lot of players, these last minute niggles, like, they don't come from a well-trained side, do they? Like, they come from a side that aren't specifically and suitably warmed up. That comes from a team that aren't well drilled enough, and they're susceptible to just random muscle strains like this at the last minute. You don't see that happen with a lot of other teams. And, God love him, but De Zerbi was the opposite, right? Like, we would go into some games and would look exhausted before the game started, because you would hear that he was just being absolutely brutal in training. And I mean, there was obviously then some injuries that came from that as well. So you've got this, as you say, you said perfect storm. It feels like that. And Elconst, I think, says in the chat that Weaver looks good as a central defensive midfielder. I mean, I think it goes back to that, right? Like, we're not playing players in their best positions constantly. And I talked about this before, but when you're insisting on playing central defensive midfielders at right back, and left backs at right back, and right backs at left back, and central attacking midfielders at central defensive midfield, and central attacking midfielders as left wingers, and right wingers as central attacking midfielders, and 10s as strike, 9s and 9s as left wingers, right? Like, it's constant. And I'm all about like the idea of fluidity and like a understanding between players, but I'm not seeing it in this squad. And I don't think I ever have seen it in this squad. And we talked about it last year when I was trying to be very much a Herzler inner, and very positive as much as I could. I've never seen what this Albion side is supposed to be under Fabian Herzler, and it certainly isn't anything like what we talked about with Juve Honemeyer, right? And what he said to expect from a team that he coached against in the Bundesliga too. So I just don't understand what has gone on at all from top to bottom. And
I mean, you can make an argument to say, I mean, obviously the common thing these days is, and Stephen sort of referenced it in the chat, which is the difference between a manager and a coach or a head coach. And we've seen the trend, which obviously the Albion are very much part of, where you are a head coach and not a manager, i.e. you have a sporting director who is pretty much in charge of recruitment. And you might be able to pitch in and say, hey, actually, we need these type of players for my system to work. But actually, you're not getting a huge amount of influence when it comes to specifically who those players might be. So I'm entirely sort of suggesting a theory, but is there a disconnect between the players that Fabian Herzler is getting to work with and the players that ideally he would want to work with to make his system work? If you see what I mean? I mean, I know he's had effectively 1, 2, 3, 4 windows, if you count both Januaries, but at this point, is that a theory? Because you're right, either he came with a certain style of play that he intended to implement. And I remember in the first kind of few months of his tenure, we were discussing, and I think you specifically said, I need to wait until X number of months until we see the real Fabian Herzler's team, because obviously he needs a window, he needs to bed players in, etc., etc. Are we just at a point where, if you look at the squad as a whole, it doesn't mesh with how he wants to play? Because it's either that or the squad as a whole isn't good enough. And I don't think it's that the squad. Yes, the squad is lopsided in certain places. But if you look at the squad that we have available, should it be in the lower third of the table?
Well, and this is why I keep trying to hammer home the point in the last 2 episodes, because a lot of people are saying this is bad recruitment, yada, yada, yada. But this is with a starting 11 of 8 starters from Europe, 7 starters from Europe. And the argument would be, well, some of them are old now, but some of them are going into their prime now, right? Carlos Baleba is supposed to be a lot better than 2 years ago when he was coming in. Pascal Gross, Lewis Dunk, right? I totally understand those. But Van Hecker, Mitoma, you've got Jack Hinchelwood. You've got players that played a lot of game time in that squad that are supposed to be in a better.
Ferdy Kadioglu. I mean, he's it's a first.
He did play in Europe. He didn't play.
But I mean, in terms of like the pedigree of the players, right? Like if you look at what we have in the squad.
Yeah, there's no reason that we, and most people agree that Verbruggen is the goalkeeper they'd rather have over Steele, right? So you've got. I totally agree with you that the squad is lopsided in places, but I think for me the biggest damning indictment over the last 2-3 weeks now is that we are now having managers come out praising us, and that's always the kiss of death for me. When you have David Moyes come out and say you're a brilliant football club, you should know your place. When you have Slot come out this week saying they tried to press us and they tried to bring intensity, we just brought it better than them. Whenever you have Pep kissing your ass all over the place, right? Whenever you have all these managers love you, it's because they're beating you all the time. That's why they love
stopped. Yeah, you're right. Pep stopped doing it as soon as Potter beat him. Right?
Exactly, every time, right? Yeah. As soon as he came in, he stopped being lovely and nice about us.
Yeah,
and
it was horrible.
As soon as De Zerbi came in, he loved De Zerbi beforehand, right? Out whining and dining with the guy. We played him that first week, we beat them, and Pep's all of a sudden not a massive fan of De Zerbi again. Like it's you don't
want it.
You do not want opposition teams' managers to sing your manager and your team's praises, because they're always doing it because they beat you. And we are now being beat by a lot of football teams. And all of a sudden, every single one of them is going, I don't know why they don't want her. So he's brilliant. Bring him on. Like, he's brilliant. Such a good manager. You should, he's really good. They play good football.
Yeah, definitely keep him. Like,
yeah, like, what?
It's the equivalent of being patronizingly patted on the head, isn't it? But
yes.
It's like, you're exactly right. It's a horrible position to be in. So yeah, I mean, I think I do. This is the moment where you want your manager to earn his money, pretty much. Like,
Yep.
and I know you can have an argument to say, yes, actually, what he was doing last season. Yes, we were fighting towards getting into Europe, and we had some good results, etc., etc. But being in a relegation battle is a wildly different scenario for both managers and players. Your margin for your kind of margin for error and the consequences of a drop in performance are massively different. For a club like us, if we miss out on Europe by goal difference or a position, or the referee not knowing the handball rule in a FA Cup final, brilliant. You can go, yeah, we had a really good season. We outperformed our budget. We finished in the top 10. As we said, any Albion fan properly moaning that about a top 10 Premier League finish, needs to get in the seat. But the consequences now of underperforming in our current position are, a lot more disastrous. Again, I will say I do not think we're going to go down, but the risk, what we are dicing with is, an enormous. It's a different world. So with that comes a different world's worth of pressure. And how many of these players, you're looking at Lewis Dunk, you're looking at Pascal Gross, you're looking at Danny Welbeck to an extent. These are the players who've been in a relegation battle with this club. Everybody else has been brought into the club either at a time where we were sort of comfortably mid-table, latter Graham Potter years, to top half, De Zerbi, early Fabian Hertzler. They've been brought into the club with a very, very different target.
Yep.
A very, very different set of circumstances. And are they, what I'm saying is, like, if you've got a situation where you've got a manager who's not been in a relegation battle in this division, and the majority of the squad have not been in a relegation battle in this division, and in fact, all of those people were brought in with the specific target of getting back to Europe again, how are they going to do in a relegation battle? Because I see it right now is that, they are showing the pressure.
Massively. Yeah, there's
So,
Stephen in the chat is saying it. We haven't got a win ugly philosophy. We don't know how to win ugly in this situation. And I mean, let's go around, because we've seen quite a bit of movement this week, right? Thomas Frank sacked, he's gone. Sean Dyche sacked, he's gone. Is it Igor Tudor? I don't really know who he is. I saw his rap sheet and I'm not. It seems to be the definition of failing upwards. I'm absolutely shocked at the jobs he keeps getting after doing badly.
I know. He's done like Juventus, Lazio, Marseille in recent years.
Yeah, and been awful at all of them and got sacked within a year at all of them and keeps getting them. And then, of course, Vitor Pereira, who got one of Wolves' only points against us at the beginning of the season.
When he's going to get his first. When he's going to get his first points for Forest, don't you?
Well, what I mean, in all seriousness, what do you make of those managerial appointments to take two of these teams out of the relegation battle? Do you think they're good enough? Because I tell you, I'm not entirely impressed by either of these choices.
Sean Dyche, that's
like an absolute disaster.
Sean Dyche is who you want. Like, you can have all your opinions about the type of football he plays and the jobs that he should be getting. But if you genuinely want someone in a relegation battle like that, I'm not for a minute suggesting that we should be getting him as a manager before anyone starts jumping up and down. I'm just saying that if you're Forest and you're in that position, you absolutely want Sean Dyche ahead of Pereira, in my opinion. He was brought in when Forest were 18. And so actually, demonstrably on paper, he's actually improved them, albeit by a position, but he has improved them. So I think it's a dangerous game. I mean, they've purely gone. If you take Marinakis out of it, because obviously he just manages he runs that club in a wholly chaotic fashion. They are essentially going for the new manager bounce, right? That's what they're hoping for. They're pinning their hopes on essentially a change of momentum. A new manager comes in, gets a couple of wins, and actually at that stage of the season, those 6 points could be the difference between staying up and going down. So they are wholly going in on new manager bounce. Bizarre that they're doing it, just before they're actually still in the Europa League, right? And I think they've got Fenerbahce. They've got to go and play home and away. But they're essentially going in for the manager bounce. Spurs, I think, are in that position where they, despite them being in the Champions League, I think they finished in the top 8, didn't they? In the first stage of it, they've essentially acknowledged that they're not going to win the Champions League and they're not going to go down, but they don't want their season just to drift with Thomas Frank in there. You'd imagine that they've got their eyes on probably Pochettino after the World Cup, but they've clearly got their eyes on somebody in the summer. They've just purely decided they don't want the atmosphere to sort of drift with Thomas Frank in there. So I sort of take Spurs out of it because I can't see them going down because they've got like a dozen players out. So when their players come back, they'll probably be fine. So it's Forest, which is the one to look at, and it's the new manager bounce. And we have obviously, it looks like we have, we're not going in that direction, which is everything that you would expect. If you look at Tony Bloom's history, right? He's never been one to really sort of push the panic button. Even
people need to remember that Sami Hyypiä had to throw himself on his sword. Right?
Yeah, he had to be dragged out of the Amex, basically.
Yeah, he was not going to Tony Bloom was not going to sack Sami Hyypiä. He had to put in his resignation for it to be accepted. Twice. So
he got turned down once. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about Forest's fixture list, right? And I think this is what makes it even more important for us to get a result at home on the 1st of March. Because their next 5 are Fenerbahce away, Liverpool at home, Fenerbahce at home, Brighton away, Man City away.
Tough.
Right? We have to beat them in that game. If we beat them in that game, we are almost definitely going to be we're going to be 7 points clear of them going into 30 odd games played. That's just where we'll be.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be, because after that, they've got, they've still got some poor teams to play in the season. They're at home to Burnley, away at Forest. So those two, they'll obviously be eyeing up, but we are on their list of games to win right now, right? And we don't want to be in that situation. I think, as you say, West Ham's run is by far the worst.
Horrible.
And they have turned the results around, right, which is good for them. But the games they're turning these results around are a little bit dishonest, right? They got their wins against Burnley, against Sunderland at home, against fellow strugglers Spurs, right, before Frank got binned off. They struggled past Burton just yesterday or Saturday, I think it was. So they're not exactly flying. And the rest of their fixture lists are quite a significant bit harder than what they've already dealt with the exception of playing Wolves again. So, and Wolves are going to come and upset the apple cart for at least someone. I just hope it's not us. But Brentford on Saturday, they are a very different kettle of fish. They brought in Keith Andrews from their set piece coaching, and they have been phenomenal this season. They are a very difficult side. We never do well at Brentford anyway. They have Macclesfield tonight. They're not a team that are going to get upset there, I think. They're just not the sort of team that doesn't take it seriously. I think they'll comfortably beat Macclesfield. And then, of course, they play us, and they're very much going for a European spot, right? And their running is friendly enough to get one. They've got Brighton, Burnley, Wolves, Leeds, West Ham, Palace at home. So they've got a really nice run in for most teams. what do you hope to see from this squad as we look to wrap up the show here on terms of like what do you want this starting 11 to look like against Brentford, and just to like give us some kind of platform to go into this Forest game, which is horribly important now. What are you hoping to see from this
Well,
squad?
we need a goal as a minimum.
That'd be a great start, yeah.
It'd be quite nice. Like, I don't want to go into this. However we go into that Forest game, we need something positive from this game to take into the Forest game. I don't think we can go into the Forest game with the spiral having gone even further. Yes, obviously, in sort of in obvious terms of like preference, at the very top is a win. That would be I think everyone's like, yes, that would be lovely. As an absolute minimum, we need a goal. Sounds bizarre, but I feel like we need a goal as a minimum because I don't want to go into that Forest game not having scored for all of February essentially. And I don't even really feel like we've demonstrated the fight in the last couple of games, in the Villa game and the Liverpool game. I feel like the desire has been there. We've not created enough in either of those games, but the desire has been there. We need the luck. We just need a goal. We need the luck to turn, to go into that Forest game in the best frame of mind, I think. And if you're in a situation where, for whatever reason, Matoma and Minte can't both start, it seems like does he have an eye on the Forest game? Like, can we do that? If you see what I mean, like, should he actually be going right? Almost everything we do in the Brentford game is with an eye on the Forest game, i.e., if players are touch and go as to whether they can start in the Brentford game, do we prioritise the Forest game? If you see what I mean, like, are we in that situation where actually everything is sort of put in, towards one game? But I refer you back to when historically, when we do that kind of thing, we tend to end up losing both games.
You took the words out of my mouth. Anytime it looks like we're prepping for a game, we definitely don't get a result from it.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a massive mistake. Steven's saying if we lose, I'm praying we get rid of Fab and bring in Bruno from West Ham.
Is he even still there?
I don't know. But I don't think there's any possible way that we sack Hertzler after Brentford, no matter the result. I just think there's no way. Like, I just don't think he's going to do it there. If the trigger is going to be pulled, it's March the 1st, and
I'd imagine, yeah. If you lose to Brentford, I think it's the fact that it's the next home game, right?
It's the next home game and a 6-pointer. It's like a horrible.
Yeah, if that goes, I mean, we're coming from the Palace home game, which was whichever side of the fence you sit on in terms of the acceptable booing and the chanting, etc. Nobody wants to see that, right? Like, even if you're the one participating in it and agreeing to sort of take part in it, as it were, no one wants that to actually be what's happening, right? Like, no one's on board with that. So if you're coming from that, if you go into a situation where you've lost at Brentford and you lose a 6-pointer at home to Forest, like, the levels of toxicity were pretty bad after Everton, right? Before you even get to, like, Everton was the first sort of game where on the TV you could hear the dissatisfaction coming through loud and clear. You've then built that into the Palace game where you've had that. If you then go into the Forest game and you have that similar level of toxicity, I think it becomes. I think he'd walk away. I genuinely think he'd quit after that.
I mean, you look at the league table, and West Ham have Bournemouth on Saturday. It's genuinely not crazy to think that after Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton, West Ham, like, we'll be sat 4 points. If West Ham can win, we'll be 4 points off. Luckily for us, Liverpool have to play West Ham the week after, so like, we should be all right. But like, there is a world where we are 1 point off the drop with a loss to Forest, and the results have already came in from West Ham, so we would know a loss puts us 1 point off the drop, or like we're going into the Forest game 1 point off the drop.
I think the thing to think about, there's two things to think. One, I think that Opta, that kind of statistic that Opta have brought out to say we have a 1% chance of going down, that will absolutely be the kind of thing Tony Bloom will be looking at. He's probably got his own, metrics that have been developed along the same lines, but it'll be that kind of probability thing that he'll be looking at. I'm almost certain he'll be looking at the stats of it. The second thing is, and this has been debated all around social media, or Brighton centric social media for the last couple of weeks, which is if Fabian Hertzler goes now or before the end of the season, there's a few schools of thought. One, it won't make any difference. You could argue it won't make any difference because the squad is still the squad, right? And as we talked about earlier in the show, him going doesn't change those imbalances that we have. It doesn't change dramatically players who are unavailable or out of form or just on loan somewhere. It doesn't change that. So you could reasonably be in a position where actually him going doesn't make any difference because of those factors. You can be in a position, which is probably where I am actually, which is almost the nature of the change itself changes the atmosphere and it changes the dynamic of it and it gives everybody a bounce. I actually think if you were going to do that, you would do it before the Forest game, because I think you'd want to go into that Forest game with the atmosphere pre-game being, buoyant because you've got, there's something different. I don't necessarily think it comes into play so much after the Forest game. And the third thing to think about is, we go, who do you get? Is that a factor? Because people go, oh, give it to Andrew Cross for the rest of the season. I go, I absolutely wouldn't, because he's there right now in Hertzler's ear. Yes, he's not the manager, but I would be expecting him to be the one going, actually, let's not do this because it's not working.
He was there for Potter, and he was there for Potter and De Zerbi too, right? So you would argue that he knows what it takes and what this team can do, and it may be that he's just a coach right now. But I mean, for me, and I said this before to Adam, I don't think there is who do we get. I think there are only two options: we keep Hertzler on, or there is an insurrection of such problematic. There is such a problematic insurrection internally that Hertzler has to walk or be walked, and we then give it to Cross for the rest of the season. I do not think there is an option of who do we get. I think it is really based on. I think Tony is quite happy to die on the hill of Fabian Hertzler until the end of the season, barring full-on rebellion internally where he really has no choice but to walk. And we've seen that, right, with Amorim a little bit.
Mm.
And but I
genuinely, I don't keep saying, I've said this at a few different points. If we lose to Brentford and Forest, I can't see his job. I can't see that being tenable. I can't see it. Because you get to the point where
we are 25-1 still to be relegated. So if anyone fancies it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good odds. I mean, and that reflects, it's obviously reflective of the Opta, that kind of thing. But it feels like it's in a bit of a spiral, the whole thing. And actually, do you know what I've said for a while, which is the criticism is starting. If you look online, the criticism is starting to shift from Hertzler to Tony Bloom and Paul Barber.
Yep.
Increasingly, right? I don't think it's an unfair thing to say. From what I've seen, that they are being brought in. They are very much being brought into the comments from people a lot more than I've ever seen. And I wonder, and I said this a while ago, as soon as that started to happen, I wonder whether Hertzler gets sacrificed on the altar of, sort of moving the criticism away from Tony Bloom and Paul Barber.
Agreed. Well, I mean, we'll find out. We play Saturday, 3:00, away at Brentford. Well done to all of you who got tickets. It's so bloody hard to get tickets to that game. Away allocation of about 16 people, I think. But we will be back next week to talk whatever the hell happens at Brentford. All I can hope for tonight is that Macclesfield do a Matt O'Reilly to Igor Thiago. In the in the most but like a nice one, right? Like it's just like a bad ankle bruise.
He's out for 7 days.
Just
yeah,
a week. Yeah, like I never wish injury too much on anyone because it's just gross. But like I hope
Can't you just actually
just bad enough, or he gets to go shit before kickoff.
Oh yeah, you need. I was going to say you need to go close enough to their training ground just to like start sneezing nearby. Like
just start like handing over all their training gear. Like
just go and get a really last minute internship, like in their kit. In like the kit,
at 36,
yeah, just so you can just start sneezing on all their stuff. Like it's wild. Like that's where we are. That's what's going to keep us up. It's just the wholly unexpected situation. But
yeah. All right, we'll be back next weekend. Have a wonderful week, everybody. As best you can. I think there is a fair bit of football this week, so just try and tune out the whatever's about to happen on Saturday. And we will see you guys next week, probably Sunday, to chat over how it went and the warm up to Forest, which is obviously a massive one. So have a good rest of your week, guys.
Cheers.